Vietnam have inherited a water economy. People are very poor, very simple. If you go to Vietnam, you will find that whenever you are from India, oh, you are from India. They know India, they love India. And then when it was unified in 1976, then Vietnam applied for UN membership. It is the USA, the only country he objected, and he had placed the candidature of South Korea.
One is, of course, this growth in per capita income that you have talked about, and if you compare it with India, you will find that the gap between Vietnam and India is increasing. That is, the per capita income of Vietnam is growing at a much faster rate than the per capita income of India since around 1980s. Welcome to Janashakti Network. Today we are going to discuss the 50 years of the victory of Vietnam over United States of America. With us today we have Professor Tridib Chakraborti, who is a very renowned international relations expert. We would be discussing about the various aspects of the historic Vietnam War and also what is the situation in Vietnam today after 50 years of their victory over the United States. Because we are in Kolkata, so we can begin with the famous scene from Satyajit Ray's movie Pratidwandi, where the protagonist is asked what is the most important development in the 20th century. And in response, Siddhartha, who is played by Dhitiman Chatterjee, says that the victory of Vietnam over the United States. The interviewer in the movie asks that is not the moon landing the most important event? In response, Dhitiman says that no, because given the technology, the moon landing was anticipated, but the victory of poor peasants of Vietnam was never anticipated, and it shows the courage and determination of common people who can defeat the biggest power on earth. In that note, Professor Chakraborti, if you could just take us through the historic battle that the Vietnamese people fought under the leadership of Comrade Ho Chi Minh for our young generation in particular.
Okay, so since you have started with this Calcutta, Calcutta is very famous because there is a famous slogan, Amar Nam, Tomar Nam, Vietnam, Vietnam. And previously I think I have met in 1989 with Jap, and I have displayed that you see how the people have shown their solidarity is because of the Harrington Street was converted into Ho Chi Minh Sarani, and the US Consulate Office is 5 Ho Chi Minh Sarani. So that is the solidarity. And there are a number of things that was happened in Calcutta Street. People have come down to the street and they are shouting against the whatever the operation that the USA have made. So this is all about Calcutta, but a number of important things were happened. There is a Ho Chi Minh bust in the junction of that point actually. Now let me start with one story that is, I may be unfortunate enough. The person who have made the entire design of the US involvement in Vietnam in the 60s, fortunately I met him in 1984. His name was David Singer. He was a very renowned scholar and an international theorist. So while the interview with my interaction with David Singer, I said that you have made a design of the entire thing, that if this manpower will be used, if this armament will be used, the USA will win the war. But in spite of that, ultimately you have defeated. So what is the reason? So he simply said, I have made a Himalayan blunder. That was his response. So my answer to that Himalayan blunder said that you have never estimated the moral strength of an individual. That is the important reason. The moral strength is much more greater than the armaments you have used against the Vietnam. So this is the history of Vietnam. Unfortunately, I have visited thrice in Vietnam. And if you see the Vietnam currently, how they flourishes, is from phoenix to ashes. That was happened in Vietnam. So that's a very interesting thing was happening. And I have a lot of data I can show you how they gradually increasing their economic strength. And they are facing a lot of, because it inherited a one-shattered economy. But today you can see, I can show you the picture, how they have flourishes because of their individual unity, because that was actually inherited from Ho Chi Minh and other important leader. That remains an important part of the Vietnam glory. So what Vietnam have done, that was a story of that how a vulnerable state can emerge as an important component. Now today in global politics, everybody is thinking of Vietnam, and Vietnam is standing its own feet.
In that respect, I think two questions are important. One is, you have mentioned that the entire country was war ravaged. Napalm was used, one of the most extensive use of chemical weapons ever was done on the people of Vietnam. The economy was in tatters. So, and then you also referred to the fact that they have kind of now gone into a high development, high growth trajectory. So, what are the basic features starting from let us say 1975 till today? How do you trace the development of the Vietnam economy?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. Now, before I have to mention that, I have to make it very important point that when the USA was defeated, they have created a lot of problem on Vietnam, because that was the first defeat. A small power have given a lesson to a mightiest power of the world. So that was a real slap for the USA. Now since the USA have withdrawn its troops, forced to withdraw, they fled simply. Now as a result of this one, in spite of this withdrawal, they have created a lot of problem. One of the important thing that USA is created on Vietnam, that is MIA, missing in action, because you know this lot of soldiers, more than 50,000 soldiers were died, and when they are returning, their family, they are claiming the insurance, and government is unable to pay the insurance. So the US government has created pressure on Vietnam that you have to identify where are these soldiers. So it's because of that pressure, they ultimately identified. Even today, if anyone can constructing a building, if they will get the bone, they have to send it to the government, and they will test the bone marrow, by which they have to identify whether that is an American soldier's bone or a Vietnamese bone. So missing in action is one of the important issue. Another important issue, because USA, when Vietnam actually, it was divided, and then when it was unified in 1976, then Vietnam applied for UN membership. It is the USA, the only country he objected, and he had placed the candidature of South Korea, that South Korea should be declared as a separate entity. That means the UN General Assembly. And frankly speaking, the government of India have played a very important role in the UN General Assembly, and Vietnam is ultimately, it was unified in 76 and 77, they got the membership. Last issue is very important issue, that is the issue of Americia. Because as you know that in Saigon, when the American soldiers, they were there, so they have married local Vietnamese women. And now when they left, the Vietnamese women, they are claiming the American citizenship. So I can share that one of my students, now she is actually a teacher in American University. She have done a work on Americia issue. And if you read the book of Noin Chandra's book, The Brother's Enemy, is a very well-known scholar. So he described that how the American issue has created a lot of pressure on Vietnam. Not only they have embargo, not giving any supply. So it is the India, it is the, to some extent Soviet Union, to some extent China. They have provided aid Vietnam for its own survival. And the Americia issue, why I am mentioning the Americia issue, there is a Oscar award winner film, Heaven and Heart, where the entire story is totally based on the Americia issue. And the first 2,000 Vietnamese women and their children, they have given shelter in USA, but their life was miserable. Oh, that's the most unfortunate story. Now what Vietnam did actually on Vietnam, what they have made Agent Orange. They have lost the fertility of the soil. Before I leave, I have to lose your fertility. And Vietnam was really in a problem. And I can mention in 1978, the government of India is giving wheat to Vietnam. And thanks to Swaminathan went there, and within few days, they have regained the fertility of the soil. And I can mention this data because in 1989, the same Vietnam, they are exporting rice to India. That is the uniqueness. That is the moral strength. That this is my country, which they have inherited from Ho Chi Minh. That was the spirit in their mind. Even today, if you go, everyone is think of the Ho Chi Minh. He is our leader. Okay. Now, when Vietnam realized that they will not get any support from Western world, mainly the USA, so they have introduced if you simply make an evaluation of the development model, it's from 1975 to 85. There's a one phase where Vietnam is struggling, lot of struggling Vietnam. But in 1986, Vietnam realized that they have to introduce the model of Chinese model, the Deng Xiaoping model, the fourth modernization program. That means it is state control economy. Now they have to invite the foreign capital. But obviously when you allow the foreign capital, multinational companies, they doesn't have any character. They may pollute your structure. Obviously, what is happening in globalization. So Vietnam, whenever you have to invest in Vietnam, when you are opening up the economy, based on your rules and regulation, how far you will open up, how far you will not lose your integrity, lose your grip, that is very, very important. So Doi was the process that they have initiated, and they have changed their central planning structure to market planning structure. So they have introduced agricultural liberalization, they are encouraging private sector, but to a small extent, not to a large extent, and attract the foreign investment. This is the Vietnam. Then Vietnam became a member of WTO in 2007, and the trade is expanding. And there is a FDI, they have initiated the FDI and other important things. And gradually we will find that Vietnam is increasing its economic strength. I have to mention one point, when the COVID have taken place, I wrote an article that Vietnam was the first country who have skillfully handled the COVID. Skillfully handled because of their own mindset, because of their own feeling. Okay. And gradually we will find that there is an important thing, the technological advancement, digital infrastructure, education and workforce, and also the geopolitical engagement they are doing. And including this one, they have given number of other emphasis on different sector, because the Vietnam have inherited a water economy. People are very poor, very simple. If you go to Vietnam, you will find that whenever you are from India, oh, you are from India. They know India, they love India. That's the feeling, that's my feeling. Now I can tell you some of the data how Vietnam has improved its economic strength. The first is poverty rate. The rate in 1975, it is 70%. But I am mentioning in 2024, it is 3.4%. When we went to Vietnam, someone said, is there any beggar in the street? Vietnam, we have not seen any beggar. Everyone is involved for their own country. This was the feeling that Vietnam had. Now if you see the GDP per capita in 1975, which is $100, now it is 4,986, nearly $5,000. It is a tentative figure, this is the latest figure. Life experiences. Life expectancy is 62.8%, that was in 1975. It increased to 76.0% because of the growing economic strength. Literacy rate, it was in 80%, in 1975, it was in 80%. and currently it is 98% or 99%. So this is the way the Vietnam have improved its economic condition. And another point I have to mention, there are a number of challenges they are facing. There is a problem of income inequality. Obviously, whenever the multinational corporation will enter in anywhere, obviously the vices, some vices will enter, but Vietnam is challenging that one. And that was actually, they are tackling it. I can give you a figure, the figure of they have used a concept which is known as bamboo diplomacy. Because when you wanted to develop your economy, you are inviting foreign capital, whether the foreign capital will pollute your system, that should be tackled. So Vietnamese are very conscious of that one. Every sphere, they are conscious because of their we feeling. This is my country and we have to fight for the country. This is the solidarity they have. And one can take the example of Vietnam, how a country for in the last 50 years, how it flourishes. Everybody in the global arena, everybody is thinking of that yes, Vietnam. Everybody is now, they are showing interest towards Vietnam, those who have neglected in the past years. So bamboo diplomacy is exclusively, it means flexibility, resilience and independence. I can mention one important point, that in the 13th Party Congress, which was held in 2021, they have categorically said what will be our goal. Because it's a communist country, they are following a model, and that most of the time they are giving emphasis on the how the people economic condition will improve. That's their one of the important goals. And you will, if you visit Vietnam, you will find that how they are flourishes. Okay. And another important point I have to mention, that they have been in 2019 they have published one document which is known as white paper, defense white paper. Every country have a defense white paper. We have a white paper, Shangri-La speech Modi have given, the Sagar concept. Then Australia have a white paper, China have a white paper, Vietnam have a white paper. The striking point of the Vietnam white paper is that they have used the word 4 no's. What are the 4 no's? That means they will not allow any country to use their soil as a military base. There is a clear-cut decision, and they should not join any military alliance, and they will not allow any foreign party to interfere in their internal matter. So this is all about the Vietnam.
Okay, so just to kind of carry forward this discussion, if you look at the data of Vietnam in terms of its, you have mentioned much of the important economic indicators, but if you look at the data of Vietnam, 2 striking features are coming out. One is of course this growth in per capita income that you have talked about, and if you compare it with India, you will find that the gap between Vietnam and India is increasing. That is, the per capita income of Vietnam is growing at a much faster rate than the per capita income of India since around 1980s. The second important factor is that Vietnam, if you look at the export GDP ratio, that is how much Vietnam is exporting as a share of its GDP, export of goods and services, the latest data shows that it is around 88%.
Yes.
So it is a completely export-oriented country. That is, it is basically exporting almost 90% of its GDP. On the other hand, the number for India is somewhere around 20s, in the 20s, mid-20s or something like that. So therefore, Vietnam is a much more open economy than India. Now the question that arises immediately is that what are the Vietnamese exports? What is Vietnam exporting?
I think one right now I have mentioned the coffee.
Yeah, I mean, coffee. I think there is a change in the exports that Vietnam has made. That is also very interesting.
Very important. That now they are exporting rice, exporting coffee, number of other machine tools.
now their most important export item is basically machine tools, machinery, and that is basically mobile phones, components of different electronic items, and their biggest export partner is the United States.
That actually, in the process of globalization, this actually, I can mention one important point. Kautilya said that no one is permanent enemy, no one is permanent friend. So everyone is actually.
From an economic standpoint, you see, if you are exporting, then it essentially means that somebody has to import your products.
Yeah, yes.
Only the largest country will be able to import so many products.
China is also, because Vietnam have a border, and China is also exporting a lot of products to Vietnam.
Yes, that is why China is the largest import partner of Vietnam. Vietnam is importing its largest share from China.
Yeah.
So the trajectory that Vietnam had in terms of its entering into the world market is also very interesting, because you see, Vietnam is one of the largest producers of textiles.
Textile, yes.
So it started with textiles and also the other rice and coffee and such products. But now it has really gone into a high technology kind of export.
No, that means they have developed by themselves.
Yes, that is
the machinery they have developed. And the core point which I have to mention, that is the we feeling, this is my country, we have to develop the country. That mindset, that was they have inherited from Ho Chi Minh and the other leaders. The spirited mindset, that is the we feeling, that is the thing, that this is my country. If you go to today Vietnam, I can show you some of the picture, the buildings, which is the roads, which are much, much far better than the Chanakkapuri in Delhi. The roads and other thing. So they have developed, that they have that, this is my country, we have to develop, and we have to, I can say that one can take a lesson how a vulnerable economy became a largest important component in the emerging global order. Not only in economics, even in strategic issues and other issues, Vietnam has its own stand. And I have to mention that USA is actually, if you simply see the Biden when visited after the G20 meeting, immediately from here he went to Vietnam. But he have never used a single word on China. Point is that what Vietnam is following, there is China, there is USA. But Vietnam has shown its own identity, which is known as bamboo diplomacy. That means, in our subject we call it hedging. That means balancing the situation, keeping my own identity. Because if it will lose the identity, then you will be maybe fallen in someone trap. So that is the willingness, that is the growth of important reason behind the Vietnam.
I have, in this regard, one question that arises, in the sense that if you look at China, for example, so China's development trajectory has been, again, the phases that you talked about in Vietnam. China also had a Maoist planning phase, followed by Deng Xiaoping, followed by various other leaders, and now Xi Jinping, and it's also a FDI export-oriented growth process. However, during the planning process or during the so-called Maoist regime, what China did was heavily invest in town and village enterprises, in education, in health.
That has happened in Vietnam.
So, can you just elaborate how Vietnam is looking into this health and education? How much the state plays a role?
I can show you the major policy issues and their development impact from 75 to 25. Like when the Doi Moi, which is started in 2008, the transition to market economy. Now the question is, when you are entering market economy, Vietnam, previously it was followed the Soviet model, that is the state-controlled economy. Then Vietnam have made an experiment, cooperative economy. Then Vietnam converted into market-oriented economy. Now because of this market-oriented economy, that is the transition to market economy, I can give you the GDP growth average is 6.5% to 7% per year from 1990 to 2020. And whereas poverty was 71%, which is decreased to 5%. That means food, shelter, education, that remains the core concept.
And does the state provide education and health to the
yes, obviously. That's why until and unless you will educate the people, how can you enlighten, how can they participate in the entire economic process? So education is very, very important. Even if today you will find the people are, the increase of the education, educated people are increased, but India have to take lesson from Vietnam. We are more or less, we have crossed 75 years. What is our, that is the education rate? It is nearly 80%. But Vietnam, China, all the other countries, China is 100%, Vietnam is 99%, maybe very near to 99%. So that is the thing, one can see how a country, a small country, which fought against one of the mightiest power, and how they gradually evolved its economy.
Now, the other thing that, because again that Vietnam is an open economy in the sense that it is export oriented, its development pattern is
open oriented economy, but obviously, like, do you think that India is a totally open oriented economy? No. I have opened up to certain level, because if you open too much, then the foreign investor will automatically
open in the sense that a large part of its GDP is basically export dependent. In that sense, I am saying. But now this Trump has imposed a tariff on Vietnam around, I think, around 26% or something.
Vietnam is affected. I can show you
what is the Vietnamese kind of response
the
to
USA
that?
recent response, that USA in 24, I am giving the figure, US have given $140 million simply with reference to the problem related to tuberculosis, HIV, dioxin poisoning victim in the airbase, Baodan airbase, and other type of aid. Recently the Trump have actually, they have withdrawn the, but Vietnam doesn't matter. Vietnam doesn't bother about this thing, they can manage.
No, but tariffs Vietnam has to bother, because if US is the largest market and Trump is imposing a high tariff, then the Vietnamese goods will become expensive in the United States.
Yes.
Although Trump has kind of given a 3 month
some
window,
relaxation. Because it is depend on the US's strategy, the US strategy, because there are a lot of debate is going on within the USA, whether this initiative will appear as a Frankenstein. But the thing is that this may be a global economic strategy. What Trump wanted to show something is quite different from the Biden. That is maybe the US strategy. But for Vietnam, it may be initially it can suffer. But I believe that Vietnam have that ability to overcome the situation, because there are other countries are there. Because already China and India is already, currently they are making some understanding. I wanted to, how to prevent this, the Trump, the policy, how to prevent that one. So maybe because India, Vietnam, China, they are very good friends. That doesn't mean that they like USA too much. It is simply what I can say, that yes, whatever happened. I kept it in the page of history. But now I have to develop my own economy by myself, with the help of my own citizen.
Now, because you have visited Vietnam quite a number of times, so given that this 50 years of history is there, that I mean,
drastic change.
No, that is true, that we have discussed. What I am trying to understand is that how does the young generation, who are the today's generation, look at both their history, Ho Chi Minh's history, or the history of their freedom struggle under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh, and also the today's development, market-oriented economy. So how do they perceive their history?
So it's a very interesting question. Now I have to mention one important thing, that after the Clinton visited in 1994, then in 1995 the diplomatic relations started. Now there are a lot of debates, because I have to mention these points also. Then after the end of the war, when the Paris Peace Agreement was signed, Vietnam, there's a US have committed that I have to provide the necessary effort to reconstruct your economy. So when Vietnam raised the issue, USA said, why have we committed? We have committed in the table. There is no written document. So that's why the US's attitude was there. Now when after Clinton visit, when the diplomatic relations started, so I met up a lady. She is the deputy editor of Nandan. Nandan was the official organ of the Vietnam Communist Party. I met in Calcutta. So with the seminar time, at the time of questionnaire session, I have raised that recently the Clinton have visited your country, and your relation is more or less now onwards is because of USA's own interest. They have started their diplomatic relation because they want to counter China. That is the main reason, because Soviet Union was no more there. So how do you react? Forgive or forget? So she told me the very interesting point, we will forgive. I immediately reacted. I said that, yes, you can forgive, but if you ask your parents, they will never forget. That is the basic difference. Basic difference. Even the Bengali, we the Indians, the Calcutta people, we will never forget. We cannot forgive, because the pages of history is already there. It may be in the library, but it is already existed. So same thing I have experienced in Da Nang when I visited Da Nang in 2016. There was an intellectual interaction. So someone asked me to ask a question regarding how all the intellectuals are there, Da Nang intellectuals. And I have to mention one point why Da Nang is famous, because recently there are a number of Indian temple who is excavating. India is helping. I have went that place, Da Nang. Indian temple was there. That means the Indian culture is already in the soil of Vietnam. And Vietnamese have generally the feeling that Indians are very peace-loving people. So I have asked the question, how do you react to the young generation? Because young generation is now using smartphone, mobile. You have also smartphone or mobile. Even if I have a mobile, but I don't know how to use mobile. I don't know the mechanical things or the technical things. They said, whatever the opinion they have given, that was not favorable. They said, we are the sufferer. One who cannot suffer, he cannot understand what we have done for Vietnam. The young generation, they have read through pages of history. They may not understand our suffering. But that is not the very important issue actually. So they said that, yes, we are satisfied. Our government is giving full protection, social protection, other thing. In this context, I have to mention one point. There is a market called Bandhan Market in Ho Chi Minh City. So when I first time went to Vietnam, I wanted to buy one tupi, that cap, Vietnamese famous cap. So I have purchased 2 caps, and one of they have given someone to interpret the language. Now she is a professor in Hana University. So I said, what is the cost? He said $2. One old lady, she is selling in the Bandhan market. A lot of other things are available in the market. I said that you bargain. That the interpreter told me, no, this is only in these shops you cannot bargain. You have to pay $2. So I purchased 2 cap, $4. I said that why there is, in other shops I have bargained. Why you are not allowed me to bargain in this shop? So this lady, when America left, they actually, more than 6,000 prostitutes they have left within Ho Chi Minh City. Government of Vietnam, they have rehabilitated all those people, and she is one of them. So that is the mindset. That is the mindset of Vietnam. Rehabilitated each and every one. That is very, very important.
Great. I mean, this experience of Vietnam transiting into a medium income economy itself a great story of our times, other than its historic victory over the United States. So India, we began by talking about Calcutta, and also the historic role that the people of Calcutta as well as the people of India in general have played in the liberation of Vietnam. So can you elaborate the Indo-Vietnamese relationship right from the days when people were fighting for the liberation of Vietnam. Now what is the situation? How does India and Vietnam?
I can mention there are a number of books are there, 2 or 3 books are there. The contribution of Calcutta in the liberation movement. One important thing that when the McNamara, he wanted to visit Calcutta, and there was a slogan, the Go Back McNamara, in 1968. That is there, and there are one Indo-Vietnam Solidarity Committee was there. Previously, it was looking after by Shantimay Roy, and then the Sitaram, what is his name? Sitaram Sharma, not Sitaram Sharma, I forgot his name. He is also doing a lot of things, and there was a Vietnam delegation, they visited, even my university, there is Gitesh Sharma. So, university have, in the library there is a one steel almirah where the full of Vietnamese books are there. But nowadays the students are not interested, not reading books, so they have lost the faith of reading books. So whether they will read books on Vietnam, if there may be some cases are there. Now point is that to frankly speaking, in the 70s, actually the 70s, the India from the 72 onwards, India played a very important role. And I forgot that slogan that Indira Gandhi in New York Times it is published that I don't forget the exact line that whether the white people, if the bombing that have taken place in Vietnam, which is greater than the Second World War, if it is happened on white people, whether they can tolerate. That is the thing that slogan Indira Gandhi have made. The one statement she have said. Yesterday I am checking that statement actually that is because of non-white, that's why the America have done all this nonsense. Now point is that for the especially the national reconstruction process, India played a very important role. There are a number of projects India have provided it. Although I have written one article, the Indo-Vietnam economic relation is a model for South-South cooperation, long time back in 1988. So the point is that India not only supported Vietnam, not only in the UN General Assembly, even in the different international platform. So India's contribution cannot be neglected, and that continued. Currently India is under this current central government. We have maintained very good relation with Vietnam, and that famous India is giving lot of defense equipment to Vietnam. So we maintain very good relation, and frankly speaking, I can say that India's image in Vietnam.
That was the other point I was going to ask.
India's image is in Vietnam, it is India. No one. You can go to, if you meet any Vietnamese in the street, hello, they can't speak English. Some people can understand English. Hello, from where you are? I am from India. Oh, India. You are very peace-loving people, something they are saying always. That it is India. We love India. So India has that image. Okay. And even if I can share you, a Vietnamese delegation, when Madam Bin visited Kolkata, there was a program in Netaji Indoor Stadium. A book was inaugurated. Comrade Jyoti Basu was there. Pranab Mukherjee was there. So Madam Bin was there. I know Madam Bin very well. So some Vietnamese friends, they visited Jadavpur. So this is the time, the mango season. So I took him once, Vietnamese friend, that let's go to see the market, like the same type of market. So one person who is selling mango, he said, you are from where? Well, I am from Vietnam. Oh, Vietnam, please. We love Vietnam. We like Vietnam. So our relation is a heavenly type relation. There is no interest involved. If you go anywhere in Vietnam, you will find that they love India, and we also love Vietnam. That is the understanding we have. Now one point actually I have to mention, that is our latest, the party secretary general, he said, Tolam, he said in his speech, actually in party congress, that in the 50 years of Vietnam, a meeting that was held in Vietnam, he said that we cannot rewrite history, but we can shape our future. The past is to remember, to be grateful for, and to learn lesson from. The future is for building, creating and developing together. That is the honorable promise of today's generation to those who led their lives, as well as common aspiration of a nation that have endured great suffering yet has never been defeated. I have to mention the last line is the Ho Chi Minh's motto. I am quoting the line: Vietnam is one, the Vietnamese people are one, a river may dry up, mountain may erode, but that truth will never change.
Great. I think we have now come to the end of today's discussion, a discussion on the 50 years of the victory of the Vietnamese people in their great liberation war against the United States and other colonial powers. The discussion touched on various aspects, but obviously given the history of the brave people of Vietnam, there are a lot of things more to discuss, and I am sure that in the coming days Professor Tridib Chakraborti and others will enlighten us on this issue in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to stay updated with the latest incidents. Hit the bell icon to never miss an update. We will see you next time with more news that matters. Stay informed, stay safe.